Recording back in. So, welcome everybody. Great to have you here for week two of regenerative leadership, and very much looking forward to seeing what the conversation brings about as now we get into the regenerative leadership framework and begin the discussions on your project. Some of you already shared your personal leadership assessment plan or action plan, and provided some feedback. For those of you not here, please do get this to me so that I can give you some feedback and we get that out of the way, and then we can move forward into the project. So go thinking about what you want to do or you are already doing with regard to your project so that you can begin to apply. The framework is great, it's wonderful. However, it actually is useless unless it is applied to something real. And the only purpose that I'm here is to see if I can help you not define what you want to do, what your space is, but to see if, with what we're going to be discussing this morning and over the next few weeks, that some of the principles of the framework actually can help you empower yourself a little further, a little more, to dig a little deeper, to understand maybe some of the complexities of how to engage your stakeholders or your team, how to communicate, how to actually get into people's hearts rather than their heads. And so to get people more transformed, if you will, in order to do the work. And that often is quite difficult as we meet with resistance and we meet with people with different mindsets and different values. And so the intent this morning is to have a conversation, or this afternoon for those of you who are in a different time zone, or this evening, is to recap what you've been able to see of the materials for today, obviously with regard to the framework. I'll be glad to answer questions. So there are only three of us at this time. I don't think it merits actually putting you into breakout rooms. So we'll probably work on this here. So any have you been able to actually go through the framework, see the presentation? Do you have questions? Are there things that have come up that are familiar to you? Are there things that are different or complicated that you would like more work on? And I've got several resources I can share. But again, I want to follow your lead. I don't want to sort of just lecture you. I'd much rather have you ask questions, and then we can have hopefully a generative conversation if we look at quadrant 3 about your work and how some of these ideas can apply to you. So, Sarah, you want to kick us off?
Um, yeah, I'm happy to. I did like the framework, and there was lots that resonated there actually with my work in organisations with leaders and in that space. Um, I was and I really loved the video, of course. I mean, I remember you saying that you wished that there was a more recent one, but
Sure.
it was pretty compelling to me, so I can see why you would want to keep it.
Right.
So with the framework, I was before we came on the call, I was reading your chapter. And I was thinking, so I'm going to be working with an organization, and what I was thinking about, we're really at I always work in the intersection of like individual change, kind of cultural change, and then, bringing that out into relationship with other
Mm-hmm.
people, but obviously recognizing it all comes from the individual. And I was looking at the framework thinking, oh, this might actually be a nice tool to work with in that way in terms of elevating those kind of individual mindsets and beliefs and thinking about um, how they want to behave in alignment with that, and then thinking about the cultural piece at the bottom and how that is manifested through their collective behaviors. And I wondered if you had any experience of using the framework in sort of that way.
Yes. Can you be more specific about the type of group of people that you were applying this to or wanted to apply it to?
Yeah, yeah. So this is a set of leaders within a third sector non-profit organization. And they did some work that I was not a part of over the summer in terms of everybody's personal why. So we'd kind of bring that in because they've been working on that individually. And what the way I approach a lot of this work is sort of with appreciative inquiry about, what does it look like when you're working at your best together? What does this mean for you? What are the ingredients of success, which really are the sort of cultural pieces and behaviors that you want to be working towards? And then what's the individual growth that would actually underpin that's necessary for that change? And so I sort of felt like this framework, and it was just sort of my first, like, I think this could fit really well in terms of illuminating things that are there, but perhaps are not explicit and thought about.
Okay. So let me share my screen just to give you a snapshot to recap here. And welcome, Ross and Bryn. Good to have you on board. So we're just discussing the things that you found of interest in the framework and what questions you might have about it. And so Sarah has just asked a question about how do you apply this to work with a group of people. So the framework, obviously, if you haven't watched the recording or you haven't read the chapter, it can be hard to get into. So what I might suggest is a very brief snapshot of this, and then I have some scenarios where we can actually discuss what Sarah is asking about. Would that work for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to do it anyway. But I was asking what your experience has been of doing it.
I have worked with the groups
Yeah,
in different circumstances, and clearly, in my experience, the most challenging area is always this one.
yeah,
My
yeah,
own
yeah,
my own personal ability to translate my own consciousness of what I believe is important into something actionable with others. I think
yeah,
that's the gap, the bridge that has always been challenging of having the
yeah,
courage to actually help everybody in the room acknowledge that everything we're doing is wrong.
yeah,
Really, it's obsolete.
yeah,
We're trying. We're doing our best. Everybody is where they are, and there's nothing wrong with that. But basically, we just don't seem to get to figure out what really needs to be understood in order to do what needs to be done. And if
mm,
everybody can actually do that and acknowledge that, I think that's one of the great first steps. Can we? So, one of the exercises I can show you here is all right, let's brainstorm 20 solutions in 5 minutes to the problem that Sarah has. What could they be? And without thinking, just say 20 things. And one of the things that does is it breaks through people's preconceived ideas or habitual thinking. Can you think something crazy? So if we were to solve climate change in your neighborhood, give me 3 ideas, one from each. Well, 5 ideas, one from each of you. Feras, what would you do if you had to solve climate change where you live? Something quickly, a crazy idea.
Yeah, just to start learning the child how to make the recycling in 8 categories, for example.
Okay. Agustin? Oh, he's frozen again. Bryn, are you there? Can you join us?
I'm here. I'm just finishing some breakfast. So
Okay, that's all right. So if you had to, if you were to say something crazy about we're going to solve climate change in our neighborhood this week, what would you do? What would be something a crazy idea?
do away with all the cars.
Okay, there you go. Ross, what about in your place?
Maybe just going to put fines for don't categorizing garbage.
Pines?
Yes, to find people who doesn't categorize the garbage
Oh, okay.
and the
Sarah,
bins.
what about you? Okay.
I think I would minimize cars and build protected bike lanes.
Okay.
Like get rid of, almost all the cars apart from the absolutely. So I could keep buses, shared transit, but get rid of everything else and put protected bike lanes.
Okay, well, that's one of the things they actually did in Bogota, Colombia, about in the late 90s, which is was a great thing. Now, obviously, it's a wonderful idea. Well, these are all wonderful ideas. The challenge is, how do you do that? So the next question then is, how do you go out and actually make that happen? And when you go back to the framework, is how do you do that? So very, very briefly here, and we'll get to the scenarios and some of the solutions or some of the suggestions about how to lead something like that. If you're not familiar, this framework is actually divided into 4 quadrants. This is our consciousness. Underneath this field of emerging consciousness empowerment, which is, I actually took from Otto Scharmer, this idea is beneath every reality out there is our own consciousness. As an individual or as an organization, a corporation, a business, a non-profit, a school, a university, or whatever, an industry. So we have the individual and the collective mindset and culture or consciousness. This is where we need to work. And this is what regenerative leadership does. It works on the consciousness of, not on the doing of. However, once you've connected to all of these things, you can begin to behave like a regenerative leader. So some of these critical principles here are what emerge from my research. And the regenerative leader actually then applies these in practice. But in practice, they don't actually do it by telling people what to do. They actually then promote that generative dialogue in the organization to actually build values, build that consciousness as an organization. And that idea of the purpose-driven leadership is that shared purpose-driven leadership. Can I, as a leader, help my organization identify a shared value, a shared why, a shared reason for existing? And whether you're going to change or improve the climate by removing cars, that's going to meet with resistance in several sectors. So you need to know how to go about it. And that requires you to actually shift the mindset and the values and the culture of your community, of the organization, of the company, in order for that organization then to go into behaviors. And these behaviors are very key. And the recommendation for your project is to follow this model in that the first thing you want to do is to prototype your project. Don't try to go big. Do it small. So if Bryn wants to take all the cars out of the neighborhood, that's great, but maybe you will need to do it yourself first and do a prototype of how it works for you, and then share that with your neighbor. And then that neighbor shares it with another neighbor. And then maybe you talk to the bus company to set up a route where you are, or whatever it is that you do, or a train station. So always start small. Figure out all the unanticipated consequences of the decisions you're going to make. This is one of the keys to regeneration. We need to design things together with everybody who's involved. So you need to figure out who all the stakeholders are, direct and indirect, of your project. And then together you need to have that generative conversation here, this collective purpose where everybody comes on board and helps understand what the challenges are and the opportunities. And then we can design that small prototype, which, if it has no unanticipated consequences, you can scale up without causing more problems than you had when you started. So if Bryn removes all the cars in the neighborhood, but then you create all these other problems, such as competition between the bus companies, and obviously the automobile manufacturing companies are not going to be too happy if everybody decides not to use cars anymore. You need to realize that there are going to be consequences to the decisions that you make, particularly when you become more visible. So how do you phase those out? Well, you need to talk to the manufacturing companies of cars in order to help them actually see a way into the future where maybe they get more invested in, obviously, clean vehicles or public transportation more seriously. This is one of the things that Peter Senge did. I don't know if you're familiar with Peter Senge, I mentioned before, MIT. He helped Starbucks figure out how to get rid of disposable cups, disposable plastic. But this Starbucks has 50,000 suppliers. So the work that he had to do to facilitate the generative conversation involved manufacturers, suppliers, transportation in phasing out non-disposable cups, plastic, from 50,000 suppliers to create a whole new supply chain. I mean, that's a whole industry that had to move in a direction. And unless you have the capacity to generate that kind of dialogue, it's going to be hell to try to reconcile all the different parties. So that's a big answer to something that hopefully we can get into, Sarah, in a minute. So the final two key points here about, and we can talk about backcasting, you can ask later, or third order change, but the whole idea is that the infinity symbol means that we're never actually there. It's always en route to, it's always in process. So don't feel ashamed or guilty that you're not perfect at this. You can't do it. Nobody knows it all together. If we can acknowledge together that we need to be together to figure it out, then that will bring us to a better place. And I'll finish this with two things. One is the notion that every decision we make is based on, and this also comes from my research, in the most effective organizations, they have these, what I've called circular systems of collaboration. More sophisticated is hierarchical decision making or horizontal decision making. That is, when we have these conversations, everybody is at the same level. If you have power dynamics and differential power in a conversation, regeneration cannot happen. So how do you persuade people to come to the table and check their egos and their logos at the door? This is one of the biggest challenges, because people will come determined to actually defend their own particular slice of the pie, and they have people they respond to. So they are accountable to a group of people whose rights they must defend or whose interests they defend, and therefore they find it very hard to let go of that in order to sit down and have a totally open conversation about the issue. And what Sarah mentioned about appreciative inquiry, we'll actually be talking about next week. So if you're not familiar with David Cooperrider and appreciative inquiry and a completely different approach to solving problems, and actually he doesn't call them problems, this is a very interesting perspective. So with that said, the idea here is that the only way we can actually figure this out together is if we can leave our ego out at the door. Can we do that? And very often, normally in a presentation, I actually cover this up and people are given this formula. And this formula, I would suggest that you keep it, that regeneration is inversely proportional to ego. The more people think that they know where they're coming from and why they're there and what needs to be done, the less possible it is for that generative conversation to take place. How do you help people become humble? Any thoughts?
Yes, if you don't mind, sir. I think by doing real example, for example, leading them. So lead by example, so they can feel the mistake and they can recognize by sample or by example.
That's great. So
let them feel about something wrong by see it in a storytelling, or do it with them so they can recognize it.
Okay. This also points to, I don't know if you're familiar with Brené Brown and vulnerability. One of the most courageous things we can do as a leader is say, I don't know the solution. It's often quite difficult for leaders to say, I don't know. And that's not what we expect from our leaders. We expect them to be confident, to be skilled and knowledgeable, and to come with a solution. The challenge that we're facing, our leaders have not helped us solve them. They're still there. If we look at what's happening in the Middle East, well, that's even more clear, even once again, with one more example of we don't know how to actually figure these things out. So, humility is the first point. Can you be transparent about what you do know and what you actually don't know? Can we acknowledge that? And so, if here what we have, this is a really interactive link, I can give it to you later. this is just a little exercise. So here is the elements of the quadrants of the framework. And what we have here, can you all see that? Can you see it? Okay. So if we're looking at what does it mean to have all of these things as a leader, and we click to explore, this actually says awakening to purpose. So one of the things that you might do, Sarah, is spend 20 minutes writing, when was I most alive as a leader? When we actually meet with people to work on the project you're talking about, is this idea of this project really making you feel alive? Is this connecting to your purpose? And if it isn't, what is it about that that needs to be refined so that you can actually, when you come across, when people walk into the room who are excited and purposeful, they're highly motivated, they have some sort of shine to them. Can you think about somebody who has that for you? A mentor or a leader who's actually brought some sort of new excitement or enthusiasm or some sort of love to what you're going to be doing, so that you actually get invited in, you get pulled in, you get sucked in and want to be a part of that. Has that ever happened to you? Well, think about it. The idea of Majora Kata and obviously Green and the Getter in the video is that she's one of those people that actually does that. She brings you in. She shows you that this is possible. And so all of these, here's the one about the 20 wild ideas that we talked about just now. And then systems thinking. How do we know that we can understand the whole system that is around us and therefore consider all the interdependencies of what is happening at any one time in your project? So, can you draw a systems map of your most persistent challenge or your project? Can you, Sarah, how many different kinds of stakeholders do you think you have in your project? Can you describe them?
Oh, well, I don't think it, for this one in particular, I actually don't think I think it's probably only about the group I'm working with is relatively small, but the organization is a little bit different, a bit bigger, because so their stakeholders would be the community they're in, the people that they serve, the rest of the organization. And then I would imagine that through the sort of, if we think about sort of wider systems, I think they support all kinds of non-profits, so each of them. So actually, the system could be quite large, although I'm only working in this particular project with a few people. So it really is about their place in the system, but also about how they operate and function as a team. So in a way, it's sort of just them, but there will be ripple out effects in terms of how they interact with other parts of the system.
So what is your greatest challenge personally in community? Are there any people who are different in that stakeholder group that you find it difficult to talk with?
Well, I've only met them once, so
this
is just like an emerging project. I mean, I have a contract. I've not, but I thought, this is going to be great. I'm going to use this framework, and the biggest challenge was on Zoom that they had very broad Scottish accents, and I was thinking like, but I will be in person, and so that hopefully will no longer be such a challenge. So I'm excited about it, but I'm also just thinking about the framing of the work. And as I'm doing this at the same time that I'm framing the work, I see, I've already said we're going to be based in appreciative inquiry. It's leadership development. Already, I do a lot of work in emotional intelligence, so we will have all of that flavor. And so I was really just thinking about how can I bring my learnings from here into this that I'm planning. So it just seemed like a great opportunity.
All right. Well, and we'll get to Fierce in a second. As I mentioned last week, the key is, can you formulate the right question? Can you set them the question, such as, what is the most important thing for you at this moment about this, whatever project work, whatever it is what is the thing that most concerns you at this time? And then to allow people to share and to create that safe space where people can say whatever it is that they're really feeling about what is important to them. And can you reduce any kind of tension about power dynamics in that group? Can you really create maybe an icebreaker situation, a visualization, some sort of breathing exercise if necessary, in order to make sure that people feel comfortable and trust each other, that whatever they share will be treated with utmost dignity and respect? So that even if they come up with crazy ideas or something is completely off the wall or even risky, that nobody will shut them down. So, Feras, what have you got?
Yeah, thank you, Doctor and Sarah. This what we are discussing now is remember me in one of the previous leadership discussions in the other courses about the connected leadership. From that, I would like to share with everyone available in this session the screen shot. I share it now in the chat box. So
no, if you can or if you want to share your screen, you can share it directly.
Yeah, I don't need to stop sharing your screen, but everyone is envisaged to see the chat box.
I can open this.
Yeah. So I have 4 P's there: the purpose, the priorities, and the potential, and the progress, which is also defined under the 3 layers: the self, teams, and system. So this is something like I learned in the past, and thank you, Doctor, to share this. And also from today, I have the chance to read your or watch the video available in the of week 2. So the framework clarified for me difference between managing a project and leading regeneratively. So for me, I have 13 years in this company, for example, working in this sector, and I have operated almost exclusively in the upper right quadrant, the collective behavior or systems. So my word is about the process, efficiency, and compliance, and I have been good at that. But what I lacked was a conscious connection to the lower left quadrant, the collective mindset and culture. In summary, so I have trying to connect my experience with the session 2 video before the session today. I'm still learning a lot from you. Thank you very much for the materials shared.
Okay, please don't call me doctor. My name is John. Right?
Okay, John.
So, Agustin, what about you? What things about the framework or what you want to do? What are your biggest challenges? What are you wanting to explore?
So
Go ahead.
What?
Yes, go ahead, Agustin.
What really I did pick up 2 concepts from the framework. I found very insightful. And the first one was generative communication, because I think it fosters the, let's say, the capability of promoting new practice and projects. I found it very strong idea, very useful. The second one was the backcasting as a tool of bringing about imagined filters and the idea of a new mindset facilitating development, but also planning action for that. I think it's a very, very challenging way of how we cope with new challenges in the future in our work field. Working in the field of people innovation, and both ideas sound really powerful and insightful. Precisely for the designer, we talkers are accompanying in the way of modeling and selling new ways of social services, improving and so on. Well, that's more or less what I figured out.
We're having a little difficulty in hearing you. I don't know if the rest of you are having the same
sorry.
issue. That's right. But one of the things that came through is that you you found backcasting interesting?
Yeah.
Is everybody familiar with the concept of backcasting?
Well, not just with that name, but they form very near to theory of change, structural innovation, the idea of defining the intended impact on what's the future of the project and going backwards to defining all
Sure.
the things, the inputs, outputs, and so on. So it's a way we work with a lot of the projects
Okay.
in our
Again,
in
I'm
our
having
software.
difficulty understanding what you're saying. I don't know if there's
So
I don't know if it's your
sorry,
earphones.
sorry
Anyway,
very much. I can hear you very well.
that's all right. So I'm trying to listen in on. So, Bryn, what are your biggest challenges as a regenerative leader? If you were to say the thing that I have greatest issue with, or I'm not quite confident in, what could that be?
Well, I would
Um,
say
Hang on.
the idea
What?
of
Oh, see, wait.
yeah.
I just
So
asked Bryn a question. Hang on. Go ahead.
I mean, a couple of things come to mind. One, the one sort of top of mind right in this moment is just, the patience that all of this requires. I understand the framework. A lot of my work is about doing these things. And I just keep going back to your question. If you were going to improve climate in your neighborhood right now, what would you? But realistically, to do all of these things, I mean, just to get people, the power dynamics you were talking about, just to get people in a room where those power dynamics are going to exist, even if they put their egos aside, that takes a long time to build trust and the humility you talk about. And so, just sort of the longer view of investing in this type of change. And then the other thing that comes to mind, I had put it in the discussion forum early on, is just, that first step of moving people from just the narrow focus of this is the thing that we're trying to change to the wider scope of this is how it's all connected and why you need to be thinking about the triple top line. And that's one I'm pondering on a lot.
Okay. So I think it's challenging for all of us of how to engage in that conversation. So the metaphor that we use quite often is how do you get a tree hugger and a CEO to sit down and have a conversation about what is going on and to actually come together and figure something out. And that is a question that I think we all need to ask ourselves. And again, you're saying about the difficulty of sitting down with people, and if you have a lot of people about removing cars, what is it that you, as the change maker or facilitator of that conversation and that solution, could have in common with the automobile manufacturer that could actually lead to a conversation rather than a conflict? So, not that you need to answer that, we need to figure out what it is that everybody in the room has in common. That's why the proposal or proposition is, what's the question that we can ask at this time that will get everybody talking, regardless of where they come from, regardless of what their interest is? And that, when you do something like a World Cafe, I don't know if you're familiar with the World Cafe exercise, is exactly that, to actually have people answer that same question multiple times in different meetings or different groups until you get a consensus as to this is the issue and these are some of the things that we can do about it. And so it's the collective intelligence and the collective wisdom by working on something that everybody can connect to without getting attached to the result that can work. So if you get very different people in the same room with very different interests, you need to formulate that question. And they need to be willing to engage in answering that question. That's difficult. It's easy to talk from here, from in my position, and say, go out and have a conversation with people. It's not that easy. So you need to think about in each of your places, what is the best way to approach and whom? Again, small. Can you start with one person if you're afraid of connecting with two? Can you start with just a couple of people where you can begin to build a little bit of momentum? So in Ferris's model there that he showed us that we'll be working actually on in week 4, something very similar, is first yourself, and then the team, and then the external stakeholders. So how do you build that momentum? We are our own regenerative project first. So if we can't actually leave our own ego aside and engage with others humbly and actually share and ask, what is your purpose? Why are you here? Then if we can't have that conversation first, then we can't move forward. And so the whole notion of backcasting goes out the window because you can't think of a long-term result or long-term future if you can't even have an agreement now as to why we're here. So the collective purpose must be surfaced first. And if people say, I'm only here for the food, well, that's great. Can we move a little beyond that? Can we find something beyond the food that can bring us together? And so, obviously, yeah, serve food, put in flowers, have music, create a wonderful environment where people come, but the free food is only the starting point of something obviously deeper and more important. And if we go back to appreciative inquiry, it's what David Cooperrider would call, rather than the problem, what is this mystery that we want to explore? Now, in your case, Bryn, with the manufacture of vehicles, quite often, and this goes back to, again, a lot of research, is what might you have in common with a vehicle manufacturer? Well, you or your significant other or your children might be suffering from some chronic illness as a result of pollution from vehicles and from, obviously, from fossil fuels. And if that manufacturer can recognize that there's a connection between what they do in their work and the chronic illness of them, their family, or some significant other, they can suddenly stop and be a little more willing to engage. Now, can you show them the evidence that what they're doing is being destructive to the health of their family and others close to them? Not just that indirect thing that you don't really care about. And this goes for all of you. Can you help people who are doing things incorrectly, shall we say, we're all doing that, see the consequences of their actions, that these affect them, not just the indirect others who I don't care about? Does that make sense? And how do you formulate that question or that conversation? How do you generate it? Any thoughts? And any specific things on your project? Go ahead, Bryn.
Oh, I don't currently, I mean, I have a project in mind, but I'm not connecting to it right now.
Okay.
What, can you repeat your question?
Right. What is it, if you think about your project, what is it, what are the things that people have that they're doing that you think need to change?
Well, I mean, the project that I'm coming to this with is more about, like, it's more in quadrant 1. I mean, that's where a lot of the focus is in I mean, it covers all quadrants, but with your specific question, the change that they need to do is sort of reframe leadership. To really step outside of the traditionals, the dominant culture way of thinking about leadership.
Okay. So these are not easy things to say, to find, to identify. So the first quadrant, of course, is about yourself, or myself. And then we get into how we engage with others. But we'll come back to that. This is not an easy subject, so I'm trying to generate a conversation here around things that really concern you. Firdaus, what would you like to say?
Back to your question about what I can see from the team is doing or the people is doing in the wrong way. I'm talking about my closer circle, which is my team. Sometimes we have new members in the team, so they don't know what's happened in the past, and they just follow the instruction of the client. So they don't care about what's happened in the past from previous or lessons learned happened with the other team members, because they are not sharing the experiences. So he fall in the same trap, and he's doing the same mistake, and we get also post-tender clarification after submissions. So then he start learning. So I engage all of the team members I create a lessons learned log that can be shared between the 5 or 7 members in the team, so they can post the mistakes and how they waive it next time. So everyone is working in the new team members, he is aware of. Sometimes the repeated of the mistakes is something I have a challenge with.
And so what would you do about that?
Yeah, I just create the lessons learned log, and I keep it posted in a general area in their screens. So, and it is allowed for anyone to add the situation and what is the cause root of that and what is the mitigation.
Okay, and you have a conversation around that?
Yeah, for sure. On 2 weeks basics, and by weeks we can talk, and everyone is if they don't know how to write this form, they can share it with me, and then I log it for them.
Okay, so that's a way of actually keeping a record of what has happened before, bringing it into the present, and then seeing where we move on from here. So that's
I have a function, yes. And I have a function for each mistake. So, for example, if I have a new team member who have a mistake in the specific things, he start doing a new thing, he filter his lessons learned only to take care of, to focus on.
Okay, good. We haven't called on you. Do you have anything that you find challenging when you approach your work in terms of those sort of personal skills or knowledge?
Hello.
Yes.
I'm still trying to settle in and just sorry, I joined in a bit late because I had work.
Okay.
But I think reflecting on my work, some of the challenges that I have is that sometimes there's sort of like a disconnect between sometimes there's a disconnect between people sometimes feel like they don't really have a role to play, like in like the work that we do. I'm in the climate action space. And so sometimes, even as we're trying to like implement sometimes projects, first and foremost, there is that challenge of people focus so much on money. And so they feel like even for a project, for example, they feel like of course, yes, I know money is important, but they feel like you cannot do anything without money. And so even when it comes to just trying to implement some climate action initiatives, they sort of just look at it from the monetary perspective. Like, okay, we would require money for us to actually be able to take part in it. But it sometimes starts, and this is one thing that I like about the conversations that we've been having in this course, where it's not just, I feel like sometimes some of the interventions that are sort of short-term effects, they don't really reach to the root causes of it. And what the root causes are like mind change, like changing the mindset of people. And that is beyond money. Like, it doesn't require money for you to like change the mindset of people, but it requires them having an understanding of what they're doing and how not just doing things for short-term fixes, but how can we be able to just move beyond to be able to do things that will be able to have an impact in the future, and not just because it's a feel good thing or because this is a hot cake that's happening, but how can we be able to put up interventions that actually will be able to last for the long term. So for me, I think the challenge that I mostly face in my work is how do we strike a balance between, okay, there is this that needs to be done, and how can we shift the whole mindset and perspective of people to not just look at it from the monetary side of it, like, okay, beyond the money that might come with the change, how is it really contributing to systems change? How is it really contributing to how people are thinking? Sorry, my thoughts are a bit jumbled. I'm still trying to just catch on.
No, I think you're doing a great job. Actually, you just made me realize something with regard to Britain's challenge here with the climate change in her neighborhood. The CEO and the tree hugger, if the CEO, the tree hugger can actually bring a report or some sort of information to that CEO that you're not going to lose money here, you're going to make money. Money is a very important element within these conversations. We all need money. And how do we generate prosperity as part of the triple top line? But how can we generate prosperity without destroying? And so if I can help an automobile manufacturer understand that by doing better things, they can actually make more money and actually increase the quality of their marketing, their branding, their market recognition. There is a whole potential here for people. I mean, when Tesla came out, before Elon Musk went downhill with a bunch of things, Tesla became a model to be admired. Because there was something there in that space that was actually bringing something different and new and much better than what we had before. But it does require people to rethink everything that they do. And I think you bring up an excellent point here. And this goes back to this quadrant 3, and I hope you can all see that, about generative conversation. I keep coming back to this, and this notion of transconceptual dynamics. The idea that, and just to be very briefly, I'm not going to ask you big questions about this, transconceptual dynamics is a very simple concept. It's just about, can we use other human faculties other than reason and rationality? As soon as we get into the triple bottom line and we start measuring, quantifying our impact and trying to show that we are better than others by actually having our spreadsheets and our bottom line, that we are more profitable, or we use what we have, we generate less waste, or we use less paper. All of these things where we base everything we do on reason actually undermine a shared collective purpose. It becomes a grunt work. It becomes routine. It has nothing that inspires people. So transconceptual dynamics is the capacity to include imagination, to bring in emotions, to bring in emotional intelligence, to bring in values. All of the, what do we believe? What is ethical? These are not rationalities. These are other aspects of human intelligence that are just as important as reason and maybe more valuable, particularly in getting things going. So can you create or generate an environment where people are willing not only to follow the agenda, take minutes, and then come back next week, but can you actually go outside the box or even outside the building and do something a little more creative and imaginative about what you do? So here we're having a very rational conversation. Would you be willing to do a little exercise to see if we can break out of the rational model? I don't know if you've watched the video last week for this week, you've probably seen it, but are you familiar with that visualization exercise? And do you trust me enough to go through it for 5 minutes? Would you be willing? Yep. All right. So Ross and Nada, we can't see you, but if you're there, what I'm going to ask you all to do is just to sit up straight. Just wherever you are, just be comfortable, sit up straight. Close your eyes. If you want to turn off your camera, that's fine. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath in. Really breathe in, relax, and let this moment just become us together in this unique moment. This is a moment and a space that will never be repeated again. So imagine how unique this opportunity is for us to be together and to have this conversation about how we can actually address the challenges that we have. and think about yourself in this particular moment. Try to let go of, as you breathe in and you breathe out, let go of everything that might be trying to distract you, that's coming in, that needs your attention. This is a moment for us to be in the here and the now, and just to allow us to relax with our spine straight, breathing a deep breath in, just and out, letting go of everything that might distract us. And as we get into that space of personal comfort and relaxation, and just enjoying the moment of being together and trusting each other that we are trying to see through the things that concern us and see how we can make an impact, make a difference. Now I'm going to ask you to transport yourselves to the last moments of your life. So think about that last moment or two before you pass over to wherever you think you might be going or not in the last moments. And you are surrounded at that time by the people who have loved you, who have worked with you, so your family, your friends, your colleagues, people, your neighbors, whoever is coming around to actually say goodbye, send you off, wish you well. And as they gather around you in these last moments, and there's nothing left for you to do, you listen in on their conversations. And what are they saying about you at this time of life, when you've done everything you came here to do? You've accomplished everything you could accomplish? And they're talking about you, and they say things. And clearly, some people will say great things, and some people might say less great things, but they all have something to say about you. So what do you think, if you were to be at the end of your life right now, what would these people be saying about you? And record some of those conversations. So think about it and just listen in as they talk about you. And breathe. And there's nothing here that you should regret. It's just listening and objectively hearing what people have to say about you. And so collect all of those conversations, those voices, and bring them back and out to the present moment. And so breathe in, catalog, categorize, classify what they've said to you, and just think, what would your older self tell you right now as a suggestion or recommendation? Well, if you want to be remembered as having accomplished great things and having left behind something better than where you found it, what would your older you recommend that you do right now and tomorrow? To think about what you would start to do better or more effectively starting right away. And just take note of that. What are the most valuable things that you can do about yourself and for yourself right now, moving into the future, whether it's in your personal life, your professional life, your work, in order to make that difference that you really want to have? And then breathe in, smile, forgive yourself for all the horrible things they said. I'm sure they didn't, but and then come back, enjoy and appreciate all the wonderful things they said about you. Open your eyes and let's come back. And if anybody's fallen asleep, wake up, please. Right. Ross, did you participate in this?
Yes.
Do you have anything that you came back with that you say, oh, I'm going to do this tomorrow? Nobody needs to share. If this might be private and intimate, so there's no need to share if you don't want to, but I'll just open it up. Ross, is there anything you sort of discovered that you might like to do?
Very simple. The lines I heard during the period was like, take it easy. That's
Okay.
it.
Take it easy. Okay.
Yeah.
Relax. Okay. Right. Anybody else? Any insights? Yes, Farah.
This is a good exercise between time to time for us. It will help us a lot to rethink, to start regenerating the good moments as well. Sometimes we go far, and under extreme pressures we forget many things in our life, and this is a good reminder for everyone to reconsider, or let's say regenerate some good moment and remembers.
This is a great point, and both what Ross and Ferris exactly said connects to something that I think it was Sarah said. Yeah, about emotional intelligence. I don't know if you're familiar with Daniel Goleman and also Richard Boyatzis and Annie McKee. Richard Boyatzis wrote a wonderful book about mindful leadership. And one of the things that most impacted me about that book, and Ada, I'll call you in a minute, was the fact that many leaders don't know when to slow down. And so he calls out the cycle of sacrifice, that you're constantly going and going and going and wearing yourself out and becoming less effective as a leader because you're running on fumes, you're running on a low battery. So one of the strongest things that came from that book about mindful leadership was the cycle of regeneration, or the cycle of renewal, that we must actually find time to go back, regroup, and refresh, and come back charged. And so if you are permanently on a cycle of sacrifice, where you're continually putting out and doing and solving and not actually taking time for yourself, that is not necessarily the most productive way. So both Ferris and Ross brought, take it easy, appreciate, respect yourself, as well as, because you are your own most valuable resource. It all starts with you. And so if everybody did this, we would all be far more energetic and positive if we came back. But sometimes we don't believe that we deserve to take a break, to stop, because there are so many problems and they're so big that we just cannot really believe that we can take time off and recuperate. Ferris, you wanted to say something, then we go to Ada.
Yeah, in short, I like to say this story. I learned it from the cyclist. When they are going in a group of cyclists, they are going in two lanes. So they are parallel to each other. And in the front, they have two people or two cyclists. They are starting the journey, for example. After a while resisting the wind, they have to go to the right side of the side or the path, and they have to keep open the space for the second lines to come up and get the lead of this group. So those two people who was in the front, they will go back to the back at the end. So those two people who become the leaders there, they have to respect the whole team behind them to stop turbulence, and they keep the same rhythm, the same speed. They should not go fast. They will make turbulence in the group or something. So this is remind me many times. I learned it from a cyclist, and I see it in our life. So these two people, every time when they take the hands of people to put them in a front, they should learn them well, and these people have to respect the rule and respect the team behind them. So this cycling learn us a lot for the leadership, as well as, on the other hand, I like another story for the rafting in the rivers. Also, if we have 8 or 7 people in the boat, and all of them are weak, and we have one strong or two strong arms, for example, they will work on weakening the team instead of making faster. So they have to think about the whole team in the boat. Thank you. I just would like to reflect from something that I learned in my life. Thank you.
Right, and this actually happens in nature as well. So when you have flights of geese, the strong ones go at the front, and when they get tired, they go to the back. And so the new leaders come in and they create that vacuum that helps all of them move along. So that's actually something that happens in nature as well. Ada, you'd raised your hand before. I don't know if you wanted to chime in as to something that you brought back from the visualization.
Yes, sure. So I think this was like a very good exercise, by the way. Thank you so much. It was so calming and yeah, just a lot of reflection. And I think in the moment, one of the things that came out for me is that I remember some time back, in my context, in my culture, in my country, there was so much, I think, as a way of trying to demoralize people that are passionate about education. I think there was at some point a trend where people would say, okay, even if you get, whatever, however high you go with acquiring education, but once you die, those papers would, like, you can't do anything with those papers. And recently, I remember being in a certain education space, and one of the things that the professor said in the lecture was that, of course, as much as we might, like, when we die, the papers, whatever education or qualifications we have, will remain. Like, we can't take them anywhere, and even the people that remain cannot inherit them. There's nothing
Right.
that they can do with it. But there is something that he said, and that's something that just came to me as during this exercise, where he said, of course, as much as the people that remain might not be able to inherit those papers, but then what you do with the knowledge that you get is something that people can actually of even after you're long gone. And so for me, just reflecting about those like moments towards the end of my life, one of the things that came is, okay, how can I practically apply whatever information I'm getting right now so that even after I am long gone, people are able to, it sort of lays a foundation for the people coming after me, for my children and my children's children,
Right.
to be able to actually like build up on that. So that's just something that came for me.
Great. Well, thank you for that. And I think for all of us, recognizing that we are unique individuals and unique beings that have every right to live a full and prosperous life, the same as everything else, is that global ethics that we talk about in that first quadrant about how to balance our self-interest against the rights and needs of everybody and everything else. So as we get into this conversation more deeply, next week we're going to continue with this into other frameworks and other tools for leadership. It is all about what we are going to do. So I wanted to share, and let's continue the conversation. This is not an easy conversation to have, and I don't want to make it about me teaching you. I'd like it for you to actually extract the best ideas you can have from the materials and the conversations. And sometimes we get bogged down and we find it hard to have these conversations. It's important to acknowledge that. Sometimes we are more successful. This exercise that we just went through is something that I've always found very successful in breaking out of the same old types of conversations. It's an exercise that you can practice with yourself and with other people in a way, as a way to actually break out of the usual ways of connecting and communicating. And we're going to look at that more deeply next week. But what I wanted to bring this back to was the project outline, so that we can do a little work on that just to make sure it's quite explicit as to what the expectation is, and that'll help you move on to the next phase. So let me share. You all have or should have a copy, as I've sent it to you, or it's actually posted. The project outline, what I've been asking you for the last few days is to go thinking about what you want to work on or are working on, which is this first part of the project. Let me make that a little bigger. So this is the part, the what is what you do. And you've all mentioned things that you're doing or want to do, and this is what the project is going to be in terms of, for me, as the assignment for me, or for the course, is to create this outline. Again, you're not going to very much time to do very much, but I want you to be able to develop some ideas. So this part is all you. It's all what I can't tell you what to put in here. My focus is here. This is what I want you to go thinking about as to how you are going to make this be successful. So because of the regenerative leadership framework, there are principles there that can help you unpack some of these concepts. You can't just say, for example, well, in order to be able to go back to some of the things that you've shared, to make climate change happen, I'm going to use intuition. No, that's not good enough. It has to be, how are you going to use intuition? Or how are you going to apply global ethics? Or how are you going to use multiple stakeholder engagement? How are you going to engage people so that you can have the generative conversation? So this section of the project, and we'll continue working on this, and please reach out to me if you'd like to have an individual meeting, a one-on-one via Zoom. We can certainly set that up over the next few days. What challenges do you have in your stakeholder engagement? So Phyllis shared the model. As I said, we're going to be talking more about that in the future. Who are your stakeholders? And what are the challenges that you have? So how are you going to engage them? What is it that you are going to change in yourself that's going to modify how you engage those stakeholders in this project? Or what does it mean to be an iterative observer? Do you understand this concept? What does that mean? Anybody?
Iterative observation, no.
Yes, iterative observation. This came out in my research, my consulting. It's people who are humble enough to say, we don't know, I don't know how to solve this problem, but I've seen people who are doing it better than I am. So I go out and ask them if I can observe what they're doing in order to bring back the best. So we have models out there. For example, you're all familiar with circular economies now, or circular industry as a model? This idea that one industry's waste actually is the food or the nutrients for another industry. So creating circular economy or circular industries means that one industry that used to produce waste that would go to the landfill now is actually selling that waste to a new industry that actually takes that waste and turns it into new products or new stuff that can be used. And again, and going around and creating a completely new model, a new economic model, which is circular. And therefore, circular systems imitate nature. Linear systems are rational. So the factory assembly model, which very often we apply to almost everything that we do, whether it's healthcare, education, industry, agriculture, these are destructive systems because they generate prosperity on a linear model with no feedback. So the cycle is, we make something, we generate waste, the waste gets thrown away, it never is used again, either because it's toxic and therefore should not have existed in the first place, or we don't know what to do with that waste. So your stakeholder engagement includes figuring out ways of how we can create these loops, these cycles, where the system regenerates itself. Regeneration is about perpetuity. How can we do something forever that is going to promote prosperity, celebrate or generate community, and enhance the health of all species for all time? Going back to the triple top line. So the how you're going to do this is going to have the effect of actually then furthering your project. It's going to actually be an embodiment of backcasting, because in backcasting you're actually looking 50, 100, 200 years into the future. What could that future look like? And now let's do strategic planning in reverse. But now we have a shared vision of the final end goal of sustainability, if you will, and now we know what we need to do in year 990, year 150, tomorrow. So strategic planning in reverse actually is very helpful, because instead of just saying, well, let's try this and see what happens, which is what we've been doing for the last 400 years, and particularly since the Industrial Revolution, and the consequences are all around us. We can no longer do that. So how are you going to do this? So how, the description, the second bullet, so the first one is about your attributes and skills and behaviors. The second bullet is about describing how you're going to bring people to your design table. and we're going to be talking more about design next week and in the following week, about how it's essential that everybody who's going to be affected and interested in your project be at the design phase, not brought in later. How do you do that? And think about that. And in my thinking and writing, it is, how are we going to bring the stakeholders that we don't even think about? So obviously, how do we bring the trees and the birds and the bears to the table as a voice, and our own unborn children to the table as a voice? They are a stakeholder as well. Have you considered, again, we talk about the seventh generation, how are our decisions going to affect us 7 generations down the line? So are we aware, and that's where we get into the 200 years, are we bringing the unborn to help tell us what they would like to see in the future, how they would like to receive what we're doing? So the visualization of us at the end of our lives is only one point in a longer continuum, because things will carry on. And our decisions will affect the people that come after us, either positively or not so positively. So if you can bring these voices to the design table and think about how you do that, and how you engage people in a conversation about, it's not just about us and the present and our own future. There are many more beings involved in this conversation. And that actually can help break out of the usual cycles of strategic thinking and planning and implementation and evaluation and Gantt charts. Gantt charts tend to be quite unfortunate in the unintended or unanticipated consequences. So you can create this theoretical model of where everything's going to go and by when, but if you don't consider all of the implications of the decisions you make at the design table, you will be burdened in the future with these consequences that you're then going to have to address again and again and again. And we no longer have time on this planet to actually make decisions that have still inbuilt consequences that we've not considered. So the idea of the design time and table. And of course, how will you include environmental, economic, and social considerations in your decision-making planning? But those three, again, are the 3 legs of the environmental, or the triple bottom line stool. But the real thing is, it's not about the environment, it's not about society, it's not about economics, it's about the well-being of all species. So integration of environmental, social, and economic concerns is well-being. So how are you considering the well-being of all things as you make the decisions that you make? But obviously you need to address environmental, social, and economic at least. So all of us have work that focuses on 1 or 2, and very often not more than 1 or 2 of economics, society, or the natural environment. Some of us don't even know or understand how we can include environmental concerns in an issue of high poverty, high violence, high conflict. I mean, why would you consider the environment when you're trying to save people's lives? So it's sometimes very hard for us to really engage all 3 of these elements in an integrated fashion. So the other thing is to consider is, how might whatever you want to do also incorporate factors that sometimes seem very hard to incorporate. So going back to Brin's model, obviously the environmental thing is quite easy. Maybe the economic factor is quite easy. The social factor might not be quite so easy. And so you might think about, well, if we remove personal vehicles in a system that doesn't have public transportation, well, there are social impacts here. People can't get to work. They're going to get up hours earlier in order to get to work. So there's all sorts of considerations that come into being, but sometimes we don't think about them. So can you include them in your design, and how? In ways that are relevant. You can't just make believe. It's not something you invent just to pretend that you're doing something about the environment. How are you seriously going to impact society, impact economics, and impact the natural environment in positive ways forever. So that's, and then the closing thoughts section here is just your reflections, both personal and collective, and final thoughts about how have you grown as a result of this thinking through, designing, and working on yourself. What are the benefits that you think this work will have on your project and on others, and then anything else you want to share that might be relevant. So, is that clear in terms of the assignment, if you will? Do you have any questions? Yes,
Just one question regarding this Word file about the project. Sorry, for me, I cannot see it on the website with the other material.
Okay, I've emailed it to you, but let me just show you where it is. So if you go back to, can you see the website?
I don't know how. Yes, so I can see the website now.
If you go to General,
okay,
the General page, and you go down to the bottom, here. Oops. So the course overview, if you go down, come on, the required here is the change set agent self-assessment and the regenerative project. You see that? There's the link.
Okay, I can see the link here. Complete regenerative project. Yes.
Yeah, if you click the link, that will download it for you. And I've emailed it in the emails, and I'll email it out again. Does everybody have it?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think it is in the general. Yeah.
It's on the general page. Yes,
I can see it now.
General.
Yeah, okay. I downloaded it successfully. Thank
you.
Ah,
perfect. Okay. So, any questions? Or anything else you want to bring to the conversation? And Agustin, have you been able to solve your microphone ear issue? I'm really sorry about that. Let's try it.
Sorry.
No, it's still a bit broken up. I don't know what it is. I'm so sorry. If you have a question, put it in the chat. If not, anybody else? What else do you have? Would you like to know? What else is puzzling you, or you'd like to know more about?
For me, I have. I ask my questions and you clarify it well. Thank you, sir.
All right, I'm just trying to get to week. Here we go. So in week 2, we have several materials. Why this is not working? Okay. We have the recorded session. There is this request from UPeace that you actually complete this midterm evaluation of the course. And before I forget, the course obviously finishes. I'm not sure if it's the last Friday, so we got another 2 or 3 weeks. But the project, I will actually give you 2 weeks until the end of the course, just to complete that piece of writing. It's a very short time, so you do have 6 weeks or another 5 weeks to actually complete the writing up of the project, so you have more time. And if you'd like to meet with me to discuss it, to see how you're going and any ideas, then just, as I said, just reach out and I'll be happy to set that up. The interactive module that I created is, let me just make it visible, is show. Okay, here we go. If you want to, here we go. So in week 2, going down, in readings, you've got the chapter, you've got the framework, this is the PowerPoint, and then the scenarios, which I was going through, which is interactive. So you can actually take a look at this. Bren, you have a question?
I do, but I can wait until you're done with what
Okay.
you're talking.
So this is something you can explore in terms of the framework, or you can try scenarios. So for those of you who are not really connecting some of the concepts, oops, come on. Sorry about that. Where are you?
Yeah, sorry, sorry. I have some issue here. I compare my screen to your screen. The scenarios is not mentioned in my website. Now it is appear. Before it was under the reading. Now I can see it. Yes, the regenerative leadership scenarios. Yes.
Oh,
Now
okay.
we can see.
Okay. So, for example, the scenario is promoting generative dialogue in diverse groups. This can be one of the biggest challenges. So, to promote the different actual principles with quadrant 3, before your next meeting, conduct a 10-minute one-on-one listening circle with each small team, not to gather data, but to generally understand each person's sense of purpose. No agenda, no notes. So there's some exercises here that you might think about as scenarios where you see yourself going out, things that you might actually consider doing. If you use the generative dialogue protocol, so it's a shared purpose question that opens each session. One of them could be, what is the most important thing for us right now? So that actually is a generative question. Transconceptual dynamics. Explicitly name different cultural approaches to decision making. This can be considered assets. Not everybody in the world in different cultures makes decisions in the same way. There are some cultures, and I don't know if you are familiar with How's the Globe project, with the countries or cultures that are very top down versus, and the cultures that are very much the laissez-faire family type, where decisions get made completely different to the corporate environment. And so decisions are made in very different ways in different environments. How do you welcome all forms of decision making if you're working with people from different backgrounds, different cultures, different ways of doing things? That's something that, so there's certain things here that you can actually work on, maybe think through, and begin to sketch out in the how section of the outline how you might approach some of these challenges about how do you engage different kinds of people. Look at this emerging consciousness here. After 6 weeks or after a period of time is the question, how have we changed how we think together? That could be quite a generative question. So all of these scenarios, I'm not going to go through them all, but just there are some things here that can actually help you maybe frame some approaches to what you want to do with your project. Go ahead, Bryn.
I was, in reading the chapter, I came across the Regenerative Capacity Index, and there was a link to download the spreadsheet, but the link didn't work. So I was just wondering if you could share a link that does work.
I've actually got something else. Let me share. The RCI, the Regenerative Capacity Index, I use with organizations. They want to do a deeper dive into regenerative leadership and see where they are. And I can certainly send you the link, and you can copy it and make it for yourself. But what I have here, that's a quick and dirty thing, is this quiz, which is also in week 2. So this quiz goes through the PowerPoint, but at the end, it actually has some questions about these the quadrants and some reflections. This can actually be connected to the Regenerative Capacity Index. And this particular quiz, you see here, and you can score yourself. So this is more of a self-assessment rather than an organizational assessment. So this is another exercise you can work on. And then I can certainly send you, I can renew and refresh the RCI and send it to you, because it's not something I just have there out publicly.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Okay, for those of you who are not familiar with what she's asking, I do have an index for you which you can use with your organization to actually measure the 4 quadrants of the framework and the leadership capacity at this time to impact systems. So is it a very narrow perspective? It is an organizational perspective? Is it a communal perspective, or it is a global perspective where there is this global interaction, sometimes with corporations or multinational organizations? So it's an index and a starting point to get the conversation going. So you can certainly use it to see where people are, and that can actually lead to a better understanding of where to go. So I can certainly share that. Are there any other questions? We've got just a couple of minutes.
Augustine had a question in the chat for you.
Oh, sorry. Good for you. Good. About triple top line, how it links to collective strategy. Okay. Okay, we'll finish with that. And let me just bring up. So the question is how the triple top line, how it links to collective strategy. So this is going to take I'll try to keep it to 2 minutes, and if everybody has to leave, go ahead. So the triple top line, so you're talking about triple top line rather than triple loop learning, correct? Triple top line, okay. So the triple top line is aspirational. Are you familiar with the triple bottom line? Yes? Okay, so the triple bottom line is managing waste, managing economic issues, so triple top line is how can we aspire to grow prosperity, enhance community, and enhance or celebrate community, and enhance the health of all species for all time. So the prototype here is based on what we talk about here in quadrant 3, this idea of the kind of conversation that you engage in. The triple top line is that shared vision of the future, the backcasting, the ideal future. How do we see this organization, this company, this industry in 50 years' time, in 5 years' time, in 200 years' time? What's the ideal situation that we would all like to see? That is the triple top line. It's the visionary sort of setting of this wonderful idea. And this is where all the financial, structural vehicles, all the things go away. But when we talk about 50 to 100 years, we talk about normally what happens in groups is we want a future where everybody has access to a life of meaning, a life of freedom, a life of purpose, a life of access to education, access to healthcare. So it becomes this much larger vision, and where everything flourishes. So nature flourishes, we flourish, and we don't know how to do that. So that's the big vision. That's the backcasting of how do we come back from that triple top line to tomorrow where everything is so horrible, and how do we get there? So the prototype is, well, what is the closest thing we can do in a small scale? And this is the project for you. In a small scale, what can we do that considers that shared vision right now? Something that works perfectly. So if you want to create a vegetable garden in your community, how do you do that with people who come without education, who are very poor, but who are going to be doing the work? You don't bring them corn seed. What you bring them is, what is your culture? What is your wisdom? What are the food that you love? How can we actually create this in a way that is going to help the soil, is going to make sure that soil is always fertile? So how do we recycle everything that's waste? How do we work together? When do we do it? How do we do it? And how does that impact economy? So how can we make money out of this? So how do we sell it? Where do we sell it? To whom do we sell it? How do we make our children more healthy? So all of these things about the project, the prototype is to do something small where you keep out or you figure out the possible negative unanticipated consequence. The prototype has to be a perfect model, and this is what we call in thermodynamics, the second law of thermodynamics, zero entropy. Are you familiar with entropy? Okay, so in thermodynamics, the idea is like the universe is expanding, and as time passes, things begin to they begin to get erratic. So we create tensions and conflicts and friction. So zero entropy for me is, in social terms, is love. Where there is love, there is no friction. So how can you create a prototype where there is a perfect harmony between the moving parts, a perfect environment where natural, economic, and social factors actually operate together and relate to each other in such a way that there are no negative effects. There are actually only beneficial effects. And that feedback loop, that feedback cycle is what we need to create, which we don't know how to do. Because somebody always comes in and says, yeah, but I can't make money with that. Or, no, we can't cut down the trees. Or, we need to cut down the trees because we need to create, obviously, firewood to make food to be able to feed our children. So, it's hard to actually create a prototype that doesn't have unintended consequences or resistance. Go, yeah, off you go, guys. We're going to go. So, that's the prototype based on the triple top line. And single loop learning versus triple loop learning, and first order change to third order changes, single loop learning and single order change is the factory assembly model, where we think that everything's going fine, we make something, we test it, it breaks, we go back, we fire the factory worker that was making it, whatever part that doesn't work, but we believe the system is fine. Double loop learning is, maybe we can do things better. Maybe we can organize things more closely and do it better. Triple loop thinking and the triple loop line is, we need to reconsider the whole thing. We need to go back to square one. There needs to be a better way to do things. And that triple loop learning is, the question here is not just how can we do things better, it is actually forcing us, obliging us to say, we need to be different to do things differently. That's the premise of triple loop learning. We have to change ourselves inside before we can change our behaviors. And that's the challenge for the regenerative leader. And triple and third order change is the behavior that reflects that triple loop learning, where we've changed. We've created a completely different approach. In healthcare, in hospitals, for example, it's no longer you're received at the front desk. A nurse takes your things, your data. Then a doctor comes in, doesn't even ask your name, looks at the tests. This is what you got. You're going to surgery tomorrow, and they try to get you out of the bed as soon as possible, because a hospital is a profit model that after 3 days it becomes cost heavy and not profitable. So if you can get somebody out of bed and out of hospital in 3 days, that's much better. In triple loop learning and third order change, a hospital is a team that welcomes you when you are ill or hurt. Everybody comes to you at the same time. The doctors, the nurses, the receptionists, they receive you as a team, and they accompany you as a team all the way through the process. And they welcome you, they attend to your emotional needs as well as your physical needs. They get to know your name, they learn who you are, they actually appreciate you, and you leave probably even more quickly because you get healthy more quickly. So the profit comes back into the system more quickly through a different approach. Does that make sense? So think about your own work and how you can apply that concept of, we are in this ecology, this ecosystem where things can actually grow and be better, but we need to be willing to suspend the old ways of thinking. And everybody has to be willing. And your job as a leader is to help yourself and other people be willing to suspend that way of thinking. Otherwise, it won't work. So does that answer your question?
More than that.
Okay, great. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Right. No, on the contrary. So we got to go, and I'll shut down. But at any time, guys, just reach out, and I'll be glad to go into these things in more detail, more depth. As I said at the beginning, I really want to follow your lead. I don't want to lecture you or tell you stuff. But if you ask a question, I will answer it to the best of my ability at this time. So, very humbly sharing something of what I've learned. And you have just as much wisdom as I do as anybody else. And you are the right person in your place to figure out with other people what that challenge is and how to create the solution. So trust yourselves. And if some of these things work for you and are helpful, then so much the better. And that my job is done. But hopefully you will find something that you can really make that difference and have that impact. All right? So I'll see you next week, hopefully. And keep in touch. Don't forget to get into the forum and the discussion. And if you want to reach out to me at any time, just let me know. And I'll be glad to set up a conversation. All right?
Okay, thank you very much.
On the contrary,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye all.
Thank you.